Well, this is a little bit of a awkward situation.
I thought you were a Fed. I
thought you were a Fed.
I was a Fed.
Yeah.
I'm not a Fed.
No, you're a Fed. I'm a Fed. Everyone's a Fed, as of course Tucker Carlson just sat down with Nick Fuentes, and the internet erupted with some autists being extremely happy and other people being like, what in the world is going on here? As we have a lot of accusations, a very interesting conversation. We'll get into that conversation and a lot more in this particular video, as of course the conversation mostly centered around the crazy violence that we are seeing in our political discourse. As one of the things that Nick said on the show I thought was absolutely critically important, and it's reasons like this why I think we need to talk about these type of controversial stories now more than ever. Now, again, there was a little bit of pushback. It was a little contentious at some particular moments, as now there is a section of the kind of establishment globalist right that isn't really too happy about this, as now Dinesh D'Souza is releasing his text messages, and so is Candace Owens. We'll do a separate video on the whole Candace thing after this one, but I think this one just deserves to be talked about in itself. Now, if you appreciate these type of very difficult but interesting conversations, subscribe, click the notification button. We greatly appreciate all the time that you spend with us. Now, the conversation went on for 2 hours and 12 minutes. Now, very interestingly, the two were just a few weeks ago fighting each other as Tucker Carlson was making innuendos and Nick Fuentes, being someone in their mom's basement that was also a Fed. Nick Fuentes came out and then didn't hold back with his criticisms of Tucker Carlson, calling him a CIA asset. And the two went kind of back and forth here, as David Icke had some interesting criticisms of Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes, especially when they talked about the need for Donald Trump to use police forces in order to squash the protests that are happening against ICE. The two seemingly kind of agreed with that. David Icke, not a big fan of centralized power, criticized that by saying, quote, the unquote alternative, end quote, media. Now, there was also a lot of seriousness in the conversations as Tucker Carlson was talking about the assassination culture on the left that is spreading, as we have to remember, it was not so long ago where a crazy lunatic showed up at the house of Nick Fuentes and tried to take his life after taking the lives of other people. There was a police shootout. That person luckily was not able to take out Nick, but this kind of overwhelming violence problem is something that does need to be addressed. As Nick said, that he is going on these shows to specifically tell people that violence is not the answer, to tell as many people as he can, and I think he's doing this strategically, as he's seeing a possible, and he's warned about this, a potential false flag to blame him and the quote groypers that he wants to prevent by going out there and reminding people, hey, do not create any kind of violence here. Now, I think that's more important than ever to spread that particular message, especially when it comes to the kind of pendulum swing that we're seeing kind of back and forth in our mainline society that is becoming ever so aggressive, ever so insane. Here's what the two had to say that I found interesting.
I mean, it's a well-documented fact that all kinds of bad actors use unstable people for political assassinations, right? It's happened. We know it's happened. Mm-hmm. So,
a lot of people point to what happened to RFK and JFK and MLK and Malcolm X for that to happen, as a lot of people are talking about MK Ultra and then go deep down the rabbit hole. And there are also legitimately a lot of antisocial, crazy people. And listen, overwhelmingly, the violence is on the left, but there also is a faction on the right that also is mentally unwell. Now, of course, I'm not here to be like, but both sides. That's not the argument that we're making here, since the left overwhelmingly has been kind of emboldened to threaten, to kind of celebrate death and assassinations, and to be more kind of an institution that has been allowed to get away with a lot of this insanity for far too long, while the right was too afraid to even say learn to code. Right? The left was able to say, yeah, punch everybody. Yeah, we're going to punch everyone, and we don't care. All of them, all of these guys are Nazis. We got to punch all of them. And now people are like shocked to see, oh, wow, there's people celebrating. There's people being vitriolic in the assassination of Charlie Kirk, which is absolutely awful, which is absolutely horrible. So clearly the left has a major issue. But I think Nick Fuentes knows and understands, hey, there's probably like one or two mentally ill gropers that we have to make sure that we get the message out there that they do not cause any kind of violent acts, because there are violent acts that do happen by the far right. And we have to understand, anytime you have an extremist type of ideology, whether extremist communism, extremist when it comes to the kind of Free Palestine people, extremist when it comes to the far right people, we have seen terrorist actions from these type of individuals, right? Extremism, lack of economic opportunities, lack of ability to have caring and loving relationships, especially partners, has always been the kind of playbook for extremism, especially when you look at what's going on in the Middle East, and you can see, wow, yeah, a lot of poor people, a lot of people who can't marry, a lot of guys with multiple wives, a lot of other guys who are promised virgins, and that seems to be an overwhelming problem.
Do you think this might be an example of that?
I don't think so, but it's certainly possible. The reason I say I don't think so.
It's kind of funny. I mean, I think of you as conspiracy minded, but you don't have a conspiracy in mind here.
No.
This is as they kind of talk about, hey, who's really responsible behind all of this? Now, before playing the kind of explanation from Nick and other people, we wanted to tell you about LukeUnfiltered.com. If you haven't signed up for that, we'll just be quick here. It's 20 cents a day, $8 a month. And you can't even get a latte anymore for $8. It's crazy. We're probably going to be raising prices when we do. You're able to get locked in. 13 plus years of exclusive videos available to you, centered around making you the healthiest, strongest, most amazing version of yourself. 3 master classes, access to me in the Telegram chat. I was just in the Telegram chat right before shooting this video. I'm going to go in there right afterwards, and you guys are sharing some really interesting things. And whenever I'm doing a live show, I'm always in the chat room, and you guys are like, oh, you should talk about this. And I'm like, okay. So I always appreciate just being able to have access to you guys that allow me to be who I am. And I cannot thank you enough for your generous support. I am humbled every single time, and I'm not supported by any government, by any special group or organization or lobby. I'm supported by you, and I'm proud of that, right? I get to say, you know what? I didn't sell out. I didn't do no PR push for something that I genuinely disagree with. I did it my own way, and I'm able to do that with your help, and I can't thank you guys enough for allowing me to do that. LukeUnfiltered.com. Link is down in the description below. Thank you so much for clicking it and signing up and allowing me to continue to do what I do here. Now, Nick has been pushing back against a lot of the conspiracy theories that Candace Owens has been proclaiming surrounding Charlie Kirk. Tucker Carlson brought it up in a way, being like, you know, there's bad actors that use crazy people to do this stuff. Do you believe it? And Nick's no. Nick says no. Here's his explanation.
No, because I really believe that when you look at all these things, and by these things, I mean these like really disturbing instances of violence like Luigi Mangione or Charlie Kirk or these school shootings, there is something going on with these kids.
Usually SSRIs. Some people say potentially MK Ultra 2.0 with the CIA. Again, that hasn't been verified. That usually is theoretical and conjecture. But a lot of these kids usually follow the same kind of MO, kind of outliers in society that aren't really successful, right? Constantly online. Always not the healthiest, not the best looking. Some people say, oh, it's because they get bullied. Well, the whole bullying culture is kind of done here. What's going on is some people are saying this is a byproduct of an extremist playbook that's being utilized and set up for these kind of sleeper cells all throughout the internet with this type of chronic online behavior.
It's nihilism. It's these people that are maybe mentally defective, extremely online. I think there's like a real problem there. And I don't doubt that sometimes these people are involved with maybe a foreign government, or they're being groomed or put up to it by an operative. But I think to assume that it's always that ignores that, like, there's a very real problem of nihilistic, surrealist violence that comes from young people. And, you know, like this guy it's a triple homicide out of nowhere, and then he tries to kill me.
He's talking about the incident where the guy showed up at his house calling for Nick's name outside of his house, and then died in a police shootout.
I think he just went crazy, but I could be wrong.
Describe the circumstance.
Now, it's true. Some people just legitimately do go crazy, right? And now we're living in a day and age where kind of crazy is the new norm. A lot of people aren't doing well mentally. A lot of people physically aren't doing well as well. Now, that kind of combination with conversations online that are meant to amplify some of the most craziest, insane voices and have them regurgitated again and again and again and again, creates this type of extremism that predominantly is a problem on the left, but also, you know, it is a problem on the right, but predominantly it's a leftist problem, since the leftist algorithms were the ones that were kind of running free of any type of censorship or pushback.
Circumstances that have led to this violence. Like, how does a normal kid, young man, go from being a normal young man to being a murderer?
I think that it has a lot to do. If you read through all these stories, they always have a few things in common, which is that, and people have pointed this out, this is not new, SSRIs are always a big one.
Of course.
But what that points to is a depressive streak. It's always somebody that is a loner, socially dislocated, or socially dysfunctional. You know, they don't have many real life friends, engage in real life activities, slip through the cracks. That's always how it starts. Then they get into either they're medicated by a therapist with SSRIs, or they self-medicate, which is extremely common with alcohol, weed, which is extremely potent now, and you could get THC from like a vape pen. So it's very powerful, very accessible.
Yeah, and when we look at the furry boyfriend who was connected, in my opinion, to the assassination of Charlie Kirk, all of those things are true. And we found out yesterday through the alleged Discord messages that he was drinking a whole bunch of booze, that he was taking these THC vapes, that he was also taking off-the-counter bootleg type of hormones, which raised a lot of very serious questions of what in the world were they doing?
You know, when I was in high school, my stoner friends would have to like go on a walk to the park and roll a joint. Now, with the vape, you can hit that anywhere, I guess.
Of course.
It's very discreet.
And a lot of people abuse it, obviously. A lot of people use it to kind of disassociate. But it changes your brain chemistry, which is also very dangerous.
They also do psychedelics. I think that's a huge part of it. And
some of the stuff is psychoactive. People don't even realize. They're like, oh, yeah, it's just one molecule. And then it's like, wait, hold on. It alters and changes your brain forever in the minds of young kids that also are into weirder and weirder stuff. This is why the Discord messages, I think, were so important that we saw yesterday, that we talked about yesterday in a video, because it describes this kind of like pathway towards these self-destructive, nihilistic type of behaviors of people constantly being online, seeing more and more kind of weirder content that explains very antisocial type of behaviors.
How is that a huge part of it?
I think that a lot of them get turned on. They'll do alcohol, marijuana, and then I think they get into psychedelics like LSD or MDMA. And I think those things induce psychosis. These psychoactive drugs, whether it's marijuana by itself or it's LSD, I think they tend to induce psychosis and exacerbate those like existing problems. And basically what happens, I would say that is maybe the next step. And then the other ingredient that's always there is, although they don't have a social life in the real world, they have a social life on the internet.
Yep, Discord and all these other kind of private messaging groups where they are social, but it's not real type of behaviors. And in many instances, they're even talking to bots, and their conversations are curated by algorithms that I would say have been in control of the intel agencies that have been telling big tech social media companies what people can and cannot say, what conversations are allowed, what conversations aren't allowed. And I would say that they have been definitely steered towards more type of extremist leftist content.
Yes.
And so they're deeply involved in obscure internet forums, Discord, gaming communities. So increasingly, ChatGPT is inducing psychosis. People talk to
There are studies highlighting how this is actually true.
ChatGPT all day, all night. And you basically have between the three of these things, they kind of go into like a different world. Between the psychoactive substances, the make-believe reality of the internet, totally disconnected from the real world, I think they enter into like this delusional state. And I think that's where that shooter in Minneapolis, I think that's what that was. I think if Tyler Robinson is found guilty, there's been some interesting screenshots about him and his transgender boyfriend. It's the same story there, if that's true. And I would imagine it was not dissimilar with the guy that showed up and tried to kill me. I think those are always the ingredients that produce that kind of violence.
Now, I think that's extremely important to talk about because quantifying and understanding this problem is the first step towards addressing it and stopping. And I would argue in the kind of very tumultuous, crazy situation that we are in right now, as some people are saying we are already in an American Civil War 2.0, we need to diagnose and understand this problem immediately. As of course, then Nick described the situation of hearing gunshots outside of his home where the guy kind of came to take him out. Now, there was a little bit of pushback during the interview. About 50 minutes in, Tucker kind of brings up to Nick saying, how, if you're a Christian, if you're a God-fearing, God-loving man, how can you say all of the Jewish people are responsible for all of the horrible things in the world, right? And then there was this kind of like back and forth that was happening between the two, and then Tucker was kind of like not letting it up and saying, look, like, and then Nick kind of explained himself, but of course he kept away from saying some of the more kind of salacious things that he usually does, because he does say a lot of kind of hyperbolic, salacious things where some people say, oh, it's only for attention. Some people say, no, he really does believe a lot of that kind of crazy, radicalized type of stuff here. Clint Russell says, just finished Tucker versus Fuentes. He's saying that what he noticed from it was that he says that Nick has PTSD. Why does he have PTSD? Well, he was treated and obfuscated and attacked by the likes of Ben Shapiro at the start of his career, where he was shunned away, where he was canceled and pushed away from being able to work, where he was canceled. And Clint Russell diagnoses this by saying, look, Tucker was trying to be sort of like the father figure here, as he thinks Fuentes is looking for a mentor, that he has PTSD from being canceled here. And he says that they're probably going to be attacking each other in a few months from now. But that's what he kind of got from all of this. And this is the kind of back and forth here that Owen Benjamin says.
Well, I just think it's important to say that, not to kind of like dodge the accusations against you. My best friends are Jewish. Like, okay, I agree. Embarrassing, even though it's probably true. And it's true in my case, actually. But whatever. But because just that principle. Well,
yeah, that was the kind of conversation that was happening there. As now, there are a lot of people that are angry at Tucker Carlson. Ted Cruz says, it's remarkable and sad watching Tucker turn into Nick Fuentes. I think that's a misstatement. I think Ted Cruz is still butthurt about Tucker Carlson questioning him about the population and the ethnic background of Iran when Ted Cruz was vehemently trying to bomb the crap out of Iran and calling for it. And Tucker was like, what are you doing? This is not America first. Now, Tucker did push back. I haven't watched the full video. I watched about an hour and 20 minutes of it. And then there was a significant pushback with some of the more kind of radical, controversial viewpoints of Nick that Tucker kind of pushed back on. So to say, oh, he's turning into him, it's ridiculous. They had a very interesting conversation. It wasn't as tumultuous as a lot of people wanted it to be. But here, Will Chamberlain says, it's been a little bit more than a month after he spoke at Charlie's funeral, and here he is talking with one of the most prominent, noxious anti-Semites and how he despises Christian Zionists. Tucker should be ashamed. This is a total betrayal. I would push back against that and say, listen, the best way to beat bad ideas is with good ideas, and we need to have these conversations. Seth Dillon quoted Nick Fuentes with what he previously said before about that funny mustache guy from the 1930s. I find that stuff offensive. I find it offensive that he was also a fan and admirer of Joseph Stalin, which also came out in this interview.
Like late December. It's actually funny. It was December 18th. I remember because that's an important date to me. And it's Joseph Stalin's birthday.
Oh.
I'm a fan.
You're a fan of Stalin's.
Mm-hmm. Always an admirer. But
screw Stalin. Stalin was a horrible figure that led to tremendous amount of human suffering and life loss. Now, okay, whatever. I'm offended. Whatever. Doesn't really matter, right? People have a right to be offensive. People have a right to have different types of viewpoints. And Dinesh D'Souza said he just decided to post his text messages from Charlie Kirk, where Charlie Kirk called Nick Fuentes vermin, as we have Josh Hammer coming out and saying, Charlie Kirk is rolling in his grave right now. And he called this quote simply despicable. Dave Smith responded by saying, what's despicable is pretending to speak for Charlie. What's despicable is lying about him and promoting your book in the immediate aftermath of his death. So yeah, strong opinions here. What do you think? Overall, I like conversations that are controversial. I like conversations that are difficult. And if you agree, share this video. Thank you so much for signing up to LukeUnfiltered.com. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you guys signing up and supporting this independent media organization. And this is why I love you guys. Stay tuned for more, all here exclusively on YouTube.com/WeAreChange.